Hello everybody, I'm Jeevan Desada. I'm a program manager in Azure Active Directory, and my core role is integrating different set of SaaS applications with Azure Active Directory and helping our customers like you to configure and deploy the apps. Today we are going to look into integrating different SaaS applications with Azure AD and how do you do the application integration. With the full pack agenda, first we will look into what the application integration means. Then we will move to the SaaS application integration types. We will also look for the demo. And then you as a customer can request us the new application into the gallery. So we'll see how do you request that particular with us. And moving that to the line of business application and how do you use application proxy as a feature to integrate your line of business applications with Azure AD. You all know that Azure AD as the control plane, and this particular diagram depicts some of your components of your infrastructure, what you have today. On the bottom left side, you will see there are on-premise infrastructure. Then there is a Windows Server Active Directory where you have Azure AD connect syncing identities from your Windows Server Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. And then there are partners and customers who you have invited using B2B and direct federation, and then these particular identities are also participating into your Azure Active Directory. On the right-hand side, at the bottom, you can able to see there are different kind of devices your organization is using. You might have laptops, PCs, iPhones, and all sort of devices which you want to control, and you want to make sure that they are secure and only users with the right set of devices can able to access. On the top right corner, you can able to see there are different set of SaaS applications you have, and there are different set of like the other clouds, including like Google Cloud or other set of clouds you have it. So Windows Azure Active Directory fits in the center and it acts as the control plane. So now, if you want to review this particular picture with the application lens, then you can able to see there are different set of applications today. You have line of business applications which are on-premise, and generally these are deployed on your servers, or sometimes even in Azure in the IaaS infrastructure. On the right side, you can see there are devices which are using these particular applications, and along with that, there are different SaaS applications and cloud platforms your users are using. You want to control all of that, and you want to secure your infrastructure so that when your users are using all these type of applications, you should able to take a complete control of it, and at the same time, you should able to give an interface to a user where they can seamlessly use these applications. When we look at application integration overview, there are majorly two types of applications what we are talking about. First is a SaaS application, and the next is line of business application. In the SaaS application today, you can see there are cloud-hosted applications, there are server-hosted applications. And we will go into the details a little bit later, but most of these particular SaaS applications today does support some sort of federation or the token-based authentication, so we'll talk a little bit later about that. When you have line of business applications, we talked on like generally they are on premise and they are installed on the server. But if you look at the authentication types or how they authenticate, then majorly you will able to see there are Windows integrated authentication, or either they have basics or forms-based authentication where user types username and password, or they are like a header-based authentication, so which actually gets the information from the header and then the authentication happens. And then there are token-based applications. So all these type of applications your organization generally has it. We have seen customers are using line of business applications and SaaS applications together in the organization. When we look at like how do you integrate these type of applications, you will able to see Azure Active Directory App Gallery is made for SaaS applications. That means any of the SaaS application if you are using in your organization, you should be utilizing that from Azure Active Directory Application Gallery. And we'll see what the application gallery means. Azure AD application proxy feature focuses on how do you integrate these particular Windows integrated auth or basic forms-based authentication or header-based authentication. Azure Active Directory also has a feature called non-gallery application, or sometimes called as custom applications. These can be used for token-based authentication, particularly when you are using SAML or WS Federation as a protocol. When we look at the example of cloud-hosted application, then you can think about like Box, Workday, Concur, or DocuSign as an application. In these applications, you as a customer will get your particular specific instance of the application. But these applications are hosted on the cloud and they're managed by that particular vendor or a partner. In the server-hosted type of applications, your application is being hosted inside your organization most of the time or in some IaaS infrastructure. But these SaaS applications, so if you look at Taleo or Atlassian Jira and Cloud, they provide the distributables to you so that you can install that on your servers and then able to utilize these particular applications. They also have sometimes the cloud version of it, like Taleo has cloud version and Taleo also has a server version. Atlassian Jira and Confluence also has a similar model. And you can think more about SharePoint as like a very classic example of this, where you can install SharePoint on your on-premise server. Also, you can actually utilize Office 365 for it. So these are the different set of applications. Generally, what we talked about is cloud-hosted or server-hosted. These SaaS applications does support the federation. That's why you can utilize them from the app gallery. Although it is server-hosted app, you can still able to utilize it. You can able to find these templates and then able to configure it for single sign-on. So let's talk about Azure Active Directory App Gallery a little bit in more details. So what the App Gallery means, it's basically a templatized version of the applications which we have it. And there are 3,000 plus pre-integrated applications we have into the Azure Active Directory App Gallery. For all the federated applications, we do have produced the documentation for each and every application. So there are step-by-step tutorials available. You can go to aka.ms/apps-tutorial as particular short URL, and you can able to see all the tutorials over there. As I said in the agenda, it's like there is a program which Microsoft runs through which you can able to request us the applications to be added into the gallery. And the link aka.ms/azure-ad-app-request will provide you all the information about how that program works. Today on Azure Active Directory as a platform, there are 37 million monthly active users who are using different third-party SaaS applications with us. This is like an active count and this is growing super fast. Some of the major applications, HR applications like Workday, or you can able to see Cornerstone on Demand, or the productivity applications like Salesforce, Concur, and other applications, these applications are growing super fast. We have seen that if you are using any of these particular applications which are listed over here, I hope like you should able to integrate application with Azure Active Directory and utilize our platform. So these are highly integrated applications and highly used applications on our platform. So feel free to take advantage of that. When we talk about centralizing application management in Azure Active Directory, it's just not about single sign-on and user provisioning. Means single sign-on has been known for years, and we are doing this for so many years, like your on-premise infrastructure like ADFS, something where it has been configured, but that's what Azure Active Directory also does support. But along with that, the other benefits of integrating application in Azure AD is taking the benefit of automatic user provisioning and deprovisioning. That means Azure Active Directory team has written some of the connectors based on the scheme or based on the APIs of that application, so that you can directly able to connect those applications from Azure Active Directory and provision user identities and group objects into those applications. It's just not about provisioning. You can able to deprovision these users immediately. And that's the benefit what you get in user provisioning and deprovisioning. For all the accessing of the application, Azure Active Directory does provide access panel as the portal so that your users can log in and can able to seamlessly access any type of application from there. You can manage a risk of your application with conditional access. You can create different conditional access policies which are particularly specifically targeted to different applications, and then can able to leverage conditional access, and you can manage the risk. There is also sign-in logs and audit logs and provisioning logs available into the portal. So whenever your compliance or audit comes, then you can able to utilize this information for that. You can enable governance on those particular applications. And the one major thing is you can manage everything from the cloud. You do not have to go to the VPN and log in into the server and then manage some sort of identity or application from there. You can centralize everything into Azure Active Directory. And the last and not the least is you can able to manage remote access to on-premise applications even. In this particular case, user will never able to come to know that like what type of application it is, whether it's a line of business application, which is a hosted application, or which is a cloud application, and you can still able to seamlessly access those particular applications from one portal. So that's the best possible experience which Microsoft Azure Active Directory can give it to you. When we talk about application integration, let's see what it means. In this particular picture on the left side, you might see your current particular model. And here, Jim Bob is a person who is a user of organization Contoso, and he is using 3 different types of application. He is using Salesforce for sales application, Workday as an HR application, and ServiceNow as a ticketing application. But you can able to see that Jim Bob has different kind of identities into all 3 different types of application. So here for Salesforce, he is using jimb@hotmail.com, whereas in Workday, he is using his username at jim.bob, and for ServiceNow, it's jbob@contoso.com. So from the user perspective, it's very difficult to remember 3 different set of username and passwords. Most of the time we have seen users are using either the same password across application or some set of passwords across different applications. Also, organization cannot control access to those particular identities into this different application because those are owned by that particular business division. What we wanted to achieve here is you want to use Microsoft Azure Active Directory as the control plane, as we talked about, and let the user provide abilities so that he can able to use or she can able to use only his particular identity, one identity across all sort of applications. That means here in this particular example, you can able to see Jim Bob is using his particular jim.bob@contoso.com as an identity, logging into Salesforce and Workday and ServiceNow. So that means he do not have to remember multiple passwords, but at the same time, he can able to just click on a button and log in into these different kind of applications with one credential. And that's the benefit what user get. From the identity management and security perspective, when you look at, you will able to see that when the application is integrated into Azure Active Directory, then your identity team and security team can take a control of that application. That means if Jim Bob today moves from sales group to marketing group, he might need access to might be another marketing application, and he not need an access to the Salesforce application. So you can easily able to remove his access from one application and provide an access to another application. Even you can write an automation for that using dynamic groups, which is another feature of Azure Active Directory. So that's what we really wanted to achieve by doing an application integration as a first step as single sign-on with this. When we say SaaS application integration and utilizing Azure Active Directory, there are 3 different types of integration which we can come up with. That means first is a federated single sign-on, and you might already have heard about what the federated single sign-on means. But basically, it enables the single sign-on based on any of the federation protocol. Microsoft Azure Active Directory does support different types of federation protocol, including SAML 2.0, WS Federation, and OpenID Connect OAuth. So these are some of the major protocols today which have been used by different vendors and partners, and most of the identity provider does support that. These applications can consume directly token from Azure Active Directory and seamlessly let the user log in into these applications. Note that here we are assuming that the user identity is present into that particular application. The second set of application is password single sign-on. The password single sign-on means if the application does not support any of the federation protocol, then you can able to protect the user's username and passwords or vault his particular credentials into Azure Active Directory using the browser plugin. So Microsoft Azure Active Directory does provide the plugin for three major sort of browsers. You can able to see it for Firefox, for Internet Explorer, and for Chrome. This plugin is available. So your users can install this particular plugin, log in into Windows Azure Active Directory, and through that, all these particular users' credentials for a website can be vaulted in Azure Active Directory. Note that your browser plugin is not going to vault your credential, but it will, through this particular plugin, the credentials will get vaulted into Azure Active Directory. And the last type of single sign-on what we support is link single sign-on. Here, most of you must be using some intranet site or you are using SharePoint. In that particular case, you want to create a link which appears on the access panel as a tile, and then once clicking on that, it should just redirect a user to a specific page. And this is the very common scenario which we have seen for SharePoint business sites or your intranet sites and all that. So in that particular case, you can use link single sign-on. This is very similar to your favorites into any of the browser. That means you can just store a link of an particular page and you can make that as a tile into Azure Active Directory, and that's called link single sign-on. We talked about Azure Active Directory App Gallery. So what the App Gallery means again is it's the inside the product we have built this particular experience for our mutual customers. So this is a common space for all our mutual customers who can able to see it. When you go to the Azure Active Directory and Enterprise application and you want to add any of the new application over there, you will able to see this particular experience where you can able to find any of the application. So Azure Active Directory App Gallery provides a set of templates for all the applications. And as I said, we have 3,000 plus particular applications and we are adding at least 30 applications a month. So we are going super fast and you'll able to find what are the application you need. All these applications does support different types of protocol like SAML, WS Federation, or OpenID Connect OAuth particular protocol. When you search for an application and select that application, you can able to see what type of single sign-on is supported for that particular app. Also, the page will show you the link of the tutorial so that before adding the application from the gallery, you can read our public documentation for that particular app integration. Along with that, we do have a custom app or a non-gallery application template. So that means if you have any of the line of business application which has been developed using SAML 2.0 or WS Federation as a protocol, then you can able to utilize this particular template. But note that you will require Azure AD Premium 1 license to use this particular feature. For line of business applications also, we do have a separate tile called on-premise application. So if you click on that, and then you can enable application proxy from here. We will talk in application proxy a little bit later, but this is the experience from where you can able to add that. One more thing to note, most of these particular application along with Federation does support password single sign-on and link single sign-on. That means once you add the application, then you can decide what type of single sign-on you want to achieve with that application. Let's deep dive more on the application side and particularly SaaS applications added from the App Gallery. In this particular thing, you can able to see on the left side, this is the new experience which we have came up for SAML-based single sign-on. We have seen a lot of these particular SaaS applications are using SAML-based Federation or WS Federation. So that's when you add the app and when you configure it for SAML-based single sign-on, you will see this is the new experience for it. This is a workflow which is more based on the steps, so like 1, 2, 3, 4. So we will tell you like, okay, you have to first configure the URLs for the application. As I said, like you'll get your instance of the application for those cloud applications, and you can able to configure those URL over there. In the second set, you can able to configure the required claims for the application. Note that now whenever you are adding a new application from the gallery, and if the application requires a custom set of claims, then you will automatically get those particular claims when you add the application. we will add the default values for it. So you should ideally review that particular claims mapping and change it if you need it. So here in this particular example, you can see the unique user identifier, which we call it as, or it's also called as name identifier in SAML specification, is mapped to user.userPrincipleName. But if you want to change that to an on-premise SAM account name, then you can just click on the edit and then you can able to change that. Also now you can able to change the name ID format. So there are different formats the specification talks about, and there is a drop down for it. So I'll show you this particular thing in the demo also, but Azure Active Directory does support supporting a specific name ID format. You can set that and use that in your application. We have also now added extension attributes and directory extension as name identifier. Those who doesn't know about what these extension attributes and directory extension means, I'll just give you a short 1-minute summary of it. Extension attributes are basically 1 through 15 are the placeholders which we have given you, which you can able to utilize it from your Azure AD Connect. So these are the exchange attributes basically, and these are the 15 placeholders we have given you. So you can able to sync any of your on-premise Active Directory schema value into those extension attributes and sync that into the cloud. And that's how these particular values will be available into Azure Active Directory. Previously, very good example of that. Previously, we were not having employee ID as an first class attribute in Azure AD. And that's where a lot of our customers used to saying that employee ID as an attribute from Azure AD Connect to an extension attribute through 1 through 15. You can use any of that and just able to sync it. And that way it will be available into the cloud. And then you can able to utilize that value as a name identifier value to send it to the application. Similarly, we have directory extensions. Directory extensions are a little different than extension attribute. So we have seen that customers have very schema on-premise AD. So if you have like your on-premise AD customized for a different user schemas, then you can able to sync those particular attributes into these directory extensions in Azure AD Connect. So you need to enable this particular feature first in Azure AD Connect and then able to sync those particular directory extensions into Azure AD through Azure AD Connect. These particular extensions generally appear like extension underscore some particular alphanumeric value, which is a GUID number, and underscore actually your attribute name. Here it can be like underscore employee ID or cost center or something on which you want to sync it from your on-premise to Azure Active Directory. So this is the facility or the new features which we have added. We have also done pre-filling of values for URLs. So for some of the applications, when we know that the URLs are fixed, so think about Dropbox as an application which has a specific entity ID as Dropbox, we know about that. So if you add that application, you will see that the value is pre-filled for you. Once you have that, add the application, you just need to click on the save button because we have pre-filled that value for you into a correct box. You can also now able to download different certificate formats, including Federation metadata XML file or the certificates, and you can able to download them and give it to your vendor. There are two new cool features we have added, which are, you can see we have patented them, which is called one-click single sign-on. Basically, it uses the form scraping technology, and the problem what we have seen is majorly IT administrators are configuring all these applications in Azure Active Directory and most of the time on the application side also. But they don't know anything about how do you configure the application on the application side, and that's the major problem. If they want to do that, they have to read in the entire article which we have published on the internet and then just follow the steps along. There are some applications which has huge amount of steps, like look at ServiceNow or Amazon Web Services. It's like 30 steps article where you need to follow the steps one by one. And if you miss any of these steps, then you will not able to configure the single sign-on successfully. That's why we came with one-click single sign-on. The one-click single sign-on functionality provides you an ability where you just click on a button, and once you log in into that particular application, we will automatically configure the single sign-on for you with your particular tenant specific values. So that simplifies your configuration experience. You don't have to learn what these particular values and where it goes. And as we know already these particular navigation and fields, so we can auto-fill those values for you. And I'll show you that experience in my demo too. Along with that, we have a test functionality. The test functionality gives you an ability where you can able to test that application yourself through your browser, and you can able to capture the SAML request and response. You will also able to see the SAML response, which has different values, or the token values like name identifier, certificate details, and the claim values. So if you face any kind of errors into the integration, the test functionality will detect that and will tell you more about that particular error message. At the same time, it will also tell you what's the fix for it. There will be a button called fix button particularly will appear on the page, and by clicking on that, it will automatically fix the error for you. Note that for both these functionality like one-click single sign-on and test functionality, you need to install our MySecure extension browser plugin in your browser. So if it has not been installed, it will instruct you and give you a direct URL through which you can able to download and install this particular extension in your browser. And you need to log in into that particular extension with your Azure Active Directory credentials. And then you can able to utilize these two features. So I suggest highly try this out. It is in https://ad.portal.azure.com. This is the URL, and when you add the application, you can able to utilize all these features. The next set of applications which you can able to see from the app gallery is about the consent or OpenID Connect OAuth based application. So for these particular set of applications, you'll see that there is no save button over there or add button over there, but there is a link given for sign up. Ideally, we expect that when you search for an application and there is no like add button, there will be a sign up link given. So by clicking on that particular link, it will take you to the page where you can able to log in and provide a consent to the application. Now we will see what the consent means. Basically, OpenID Connect is another federation protocol which has been used, and in OpenID Connect OAuth, along with authentication, it also talks about authorization. Authorization means different set of permissions what that application need from your particular directory. You can able to see that if you are using your mobile applications, or if you go to the Apple Store or the Google Android Play Store, you are downloading applications and it will ask about, do you want to give access to camera or contact or something like that. It's a very similar kind of experience we have. We call this particular experience called consent to an application. This will show which particular application is trying to access your Azure Active Directory and what permission it needs to log in with your credentials. These particular permissions box is being shown over there in the, if you look at the second picture in that particular slide, there it is asking for sign in and read user profile. This is a very common permission most of the applications are using. That means the application want to read your user profile from your token, and that means it's basic information like your first name, last name, your email address, and your UPN value. So that's like a basic set of information. If you accept this, then click on the accept button and the application will get automatically added into your enterprise application. And from that point onwards, you can just able to manage that application. The box which has been shown over here, it's consent on behalf of your organization, is only visible for administrators. That means if you are a global administrator of your Azure Active Directory and providing a consent to the application, then at that time, you can say consent on behalf of your organization. So think about a scenario where you are deploying this particular application for thousands of users in your organization. You do not want users to see this particular screen and everybody to click on that accept button, because half of the people might not know what it means and they might call your help desk or support desk and ask about this. So this is ideal condition where you can check this box, say consent on behalf of my organization, and accept it. That way you are providing a consent on behalf of all your users into the organization. and they will not able to see this particular screen, and they can directly able to log in into your application. Enterprise application has an audit log into which if you look at the activity as consented applications, then you can able to see different consented applications which have been used in your organization. The 30-day report over here shows that different applications which my users have consented to, and the list appears over there. From that point onwards, you can able to manage these applications into your enterprise application page. Manage means you can provide a set of users and groups access to that application. You can enable conditional access policies to these applications, and so on and so forth, like multi-factor authentication or device-based conditional access policies. But that's how you should be using OpenID Connect OAuth applications from our app gallery. Sometimes you'll see that the application is not in the gallery, but somebody just consented for an application. Those will also appear into your enterprise application page. So one of my requests to all IT administrators and all the IAM and security team is keep an eye on this particular audit log, and that will tell you which are the different applications is been added into your organization so that you can take a control on that. Let's go and deep dive into the demo now. The first thing what you have to do is log in into the Azure Management Portal. And if you do not know about the short URL, then I suggest that you should be using aad.portal.azure.com. With this particular URL, when you log in, you can able to see only the short particular or only a small set of navigation on the left. That means if you're using day out the Azure Active Directory only in Azure Management Portal, then you should be using this URL. As I said, the simple is aad.portal.azure.com, and you log in with your credentials, and you can able to see the screen. Enterprise application option is being also shown on the left, so I click on that and I'm directly logged in, and I can able to see all applications which have been configured for single sign-on. All these applications I can able to manage from this page. Also, I can able to search more particular applications by putting a value over here. I can just able to see. Okay, this is my Salmon Edge application which have it over here. Or if you want to see a more set of application, then there is a load more button at the bottom. You can just click on that and you can able to see a laundry list of all your applications which you have configured for single sign-on and user provisioning. You can able to add new application by clicking on this particular button. So when I click on new application over here, it actually takes me to the experience of the Azure Active Directory app gallery. So here you can able to see there are 3,200 plus applications available into the app gallery, and I can able to search any application from this particular search box. So I'm going to search for Salesforce over here, and you can able to see there are two different Salesforce applications we have. When I click on the application shows the different single sign-on modes available for that particular application. Also, it provides me the link for documentation. So I click on this particular link and it takes me to that particular specific documentation. All these particular documentations are published in different locale. So based on the browser locale, it will render the particular article. So I have said this in English, so that's why it's available right now in English. But this particular articles provides me all the configuration details which I have to do for that app in Azure Active Directory, and also it provides me the steps on the application side. That means how do I configure the single sign-on in Salesforce application? That's also been shown over here. You just need to follow this particular tutorial step by step to make sure that you can able to configure single sign-on and test it out. There are 1,000 plus articles over here on the left hand side. So the easiest way on this page, if you want to do it, is just search for different article, and then you can able to find that particular article. So here I'm typing about DocuSign, and you can able to see DocuSign is being supported with single sign-on and also with user provisioning. So clicking on that particular link takes you to that particular page where it shows how do you configure single sign-on with DocuSign. If you want to see all the articles which we have it, then I suggest to use aka.ms/apps tutorial as a short link so that you can able to see the entire set of applications or the index page where we have given the quick links, you can able to search it, and all the one-click single sign-on supported applications. So that way, you can easily find your application and read about how do you configure single sign-on and user provisioning for those applications. Let's go back to the application app gallery over here. As I said, if you cannot find any of the application into the app gallery, it will show you a message like click here to request the application to be added into the gallery. So this is another program which we talked about where you can, if you cannot find the app, you can request, you as a customer can request an application to be added into the app gallery. We also talked about the non-gallery application template or the custom application, which supports SAML-based single sign-on and automatic user provisioning with SCIM, along with password single sign-on. So that means if you are configuring any of your line of business application which supports SAML or WS Federation as a federation protocol, then you can able to utilize this template. We highly recommend that to not use this template for different SaaS applications. And the reason for that is once we enable user provisioning for an app, you will not able to utilize that. You might able to configure single sign-on with it, but you will not able to leverage the user provisioning features which we publish for that app. If you add the application from the gallery, then you will able to get an ability to do single sign-on and user provisioning with that particular application. So let's see DocuSign over here. So I search for DocuSign, I can able to find that particular app, and now before adding, I can able to change the app name, or even after adding, you can able to change the name of the application and also the icon associated with that application. DocuSign in Contoso organization might be considered as e-sign application or e-signing application of Contoso. So I can rename that to Contoso e-signing or document signing or whatever the way I want. Once you add the application, you will be adding the template of that particular application into your tenant or into your Azure Active Directory. For now, I'm not going to add that. I have already added DocuSign as an application. So let's look for that application into enterprise application. So I'm searching for my DocuSign application and I do get that. So I click on that DocuSign application and goes to the single sign-on page. So once you click on the single sign-on, first thing you will notice that it will give you this page where it says this application does support SAML-based single sign-on, password single sign-on, and link single sign-on. Disable is the default mode. That means you're disabling the single sign-on. But now if you want to enable single sign-on, the rich and secure authentication experience what you can get is with SAML-based or any of the token-based federation single sign-on. So let's click on that. And then it will take you to the page where you can able to configure this particular app. There is also a configuration guide link given through which you can able to read the documentation for that specific app. So it's also available here. The first thing what you need to do is configure the URLs. When you click on the edit button of that, some of these URLs will be auto-populated sometimes, but otherwise you will able to see different patterns which we support for that application. In case of DocuSign, I think first you need to just add your organization specific URLs, which I've done it over here. And once I do that, then I can able to go into the user attributes and claims. If you do not know, then right now you can just populate the URLs as a dummy URL, set of URLs if you want, and then just look at the claims. The claims information is the different set of values which you are sending into the token. That means what kind of information you want to send from your Azure Active Directory to that particular SaaS application. So here, Azure Active Directory by default gives certain set of claims information. That means it's given name, surname, and email address are the default claims, along with the name identifier. So as I said, in Azure Active Directory, we call this as unique user identifier in name ID. And right now, the value which is being populated for that is user principal name. So as I talked on the previous slide, so Azure Active Directory does provide different formats of the name identifier. So these formats are here, so you can able to see email address, persistent, unspecified, and Windows domain qualified name are the different formats which Azure Active Directory does support. Transient is not been given specifically because it's a transient value. So if application requests for transient, then we will provide that particular format and the associated value with it. The default is the default setting. So that means if you have not set anything, keep it to the default, and based on the request, we will evaluate and we send that the value back. There is one more feature which we recently enabled called claim conditions. And what it means is basically you can actually do a conditional claim evaluation in this particular user experience. You can able to, in the previous world, you might have seen the conditions where if the user belongs to sales group, then I want to send sales as a value. So basically it's a if and else condition where you are checking the user's membership, and based on the membership, you are sending some sort of values in the token. This is what Azure Active Directory does support, and you can able to say that if it's any user which is part of my particular, suppose here I'm saying finance group, I'm selecting that, and then I want to send the fixed value as finance over here. So I can type that directly and I can select it from the drop down, and then I can say this particular value again, if the user belongs to any of the HR particular group, then send the attribute as HR. So basically what it does is it actually sequentially checks those particular things in an order. So if the first condition has been met, then it will not go to the second condition. But if first condition doesn't met, then it goes to the second condition like that. And it goes evaluating multiple conditions on the fly. Here I have right now chosen the fixed values, but you can able to choose any of the drop down values also, or you can able to apply transformations. But this is what the ability which we have recently came up with, and that's available for name identifier and all other claims also. I'm not going to save this, so I'll just say discard right now. And going back to the user attributes and claims. If you want to add a new claim, then you can able to add it from here. So you can just able to give the claim name, suppose organization, ID I want to provide, and I can just say source attribute, I want to give it some of my name, or I can also able to type in again the fixed value over here. I can also use the claim conditions over here. In the transformations, we have recently came with a multiple set of transformations. If you have not looked at this, then I highly recommend to look at this. And this will help you to build if and else sort of conditions in the claim. So you can say if this particular value, so user.department, I'm just selecting if empty. That means if user.department is empty, then provide this kind of value, which is might be just IT for an example. I'm just taking this as an example value over here, but here you can able to add different set of conditions, and it will show you at the bottom like what condition you are evaluating. You can also add else condition over here. So if user.department is blank, then have IT, or if there is no output on that, then provide else something like that. And you can able to use these particular conditions for your claims. Let's quickly go back, and now we will focus on the different notifications. So every application which you able to add from Azure Active Directory, you will able to see there is a 3-year valid certificate, X509 certificate created for every application. That means for every customer or every Azure Active Directory tenant, every application which is enabled for SAML single sign-on has 3 years valid X509 certificate attached to it. You can able to configure different notification email address over here. We highly recommend that you configure the distribution list so that multiple users can get a notification. all these notification goes 60 days before the certificate expiry, 30 days, and 7 days before the certificate expiry. That means you will be receiving 3 notifications from Azure Active Directory that will tell saying that your certificate is going to expire and you need to rotate the certificate. You can able to create click on the new certificate and create a new certificate for it, or you can also import a certificate. Note that while importing the certificate, you need to enter your PFX password because you will be managing the security of that particular certificate and not Microsoft Azure Active Directory. That's how the difference is. Or if you have a scenario where you have multiple applications want to use the same certificate, then we suggest to use import certificate approach here. As I said, I'll promise I'll show you the DocuSign single sign-on, the one-click single sign-on functionality. But note that for this particular thing to enable, you need to have a MyApp Secure Sign-in browser extension plugin. If this plugin is already installed, you will see a message. If it is not installed, then it will provide you a link through which you can able to go to the browser marketplace and able to add and sign in with that. So here in this particular scenario, you can able to see I'm already logged in with my organization credentials, and now I can able to click on Setup DocuSign. With this, when I click on the Setup DocuSign, it shows saying that do you want to save this particular certificate. I'm clicking on the Save button, and I'm downloading this particular certificate. I've downloaded the certificate, and now the box appears at the top saying that confirm that you have the SAML certificate you have downloaded. As I click on the OK, because yes, I have downloaded already. And now it is asking me saying that log into DocuSign with your admin credentials. So I put my username, and this is my password. So I'm logging in the DocuSign with my admin credentials. And the next thing what happens is it is telling me saying that Azure Active Directory can autofill all the values for you and enable single sign-on for your enterprise. Do you want to proceed? I'm going to click on the yes button, and you can able to watch saying that this actually opens up the page automatically, fill out all the values, and you can able to map that this identity provider, issuer URL, login URL, and logout URL, all of those are populated based on my tenant. So here, if you look at the login URL, which starts with some 4F7, so here all those values are correctly populated, options are correctly selected, and then there is also a certificate which is attached. You can add a certificate manually if you want and map that particular certificate to your identity provider. Note that you can able to save this configuration right now, but you can able to edit this configuration at any point of time. Here right now I have mapped the email address to my particular attribute so that the user mapping can happen. But if you want to have a different kind of mapping, you can just save it and then edit this configuration. Basically, we provide the default mapping for you, but you can able to customize that at any point of time. Right now, I'm just clicking on the OK button, and you can able to see the configuration is being saved. And the next thing what happens is automatically switch back to my Azure Active Directory portal. So it gives me a message saying that auto configuration is complete, and I can able to now test the single sign-on experience. So the one-click single sign-on, as I said, gives you ability to do this automatically configuring single sign-on for that app. Today we have like 50 plus applications. We are looking towards hundreds of applications like this, through which you can able to do this one-click single sign-on. And if the application is enabled for one-click single sign-on, you will be able to see that button appearing over here. Let's do the test single sign-on experience, what it means. When you click on the test, it provides you saying that now you can able to do a test with DocuSign. There are two options, sign in as current user and sign in as someone else. That means I can able to sign into DocuSign as my current user, and I can able to test this single sign-on. So let's first do a sign out. So when I click on OK, it automatically signed me out from that. And let's go back to Azure Active Directory. And now clicking on the sign in as current user, what happens is basically it performs the SAML request and response are getting generated, and it actually captures all these particular token values. So here you can able to see that the token signing certificate details have been given. These are the different claims which have been issued in my token, and this is what the name identifier format and the value looks like. So this is the ability which you can able to get. This will help you to troubleshoot your particular single sign-on and look at like how the single sign-on is working. If you face an error, you will able to see an option over here which auto-populates the error message and says this is the remediation for that. And by clicking on the fix button, it automatically fix it out. You can also click on sign in as someone else, and which will prompt for credentials on the Azure Active Directory. So you can able to sign this with somebody else and then still able to capture these particular token values here. That's how you should be using the test experience. There are also options for conditional access over here. So you can able to configure the new conditional access policy for any app. One of the important thing to remember that whenever you are adding a new application from the gallery, you will able to change the name. You can update the icons for it. But one of the another feature is user assignment required. By default, this is set to yes for every gallery application. That means whenever you are adding an application from the gallery, you need to assign that particular application to specific set of users and groups. We start with the concept of security where the minimum access first, and that's where the user assignment required is set to true. You can go to users and groups and add different users and groups by clicking on the add user button, and then you can assign that particular user and group for that particular application. That way only those set of users and the group members can able to access the application. If you want to look into the logs, you can look at the activity and see the sign-in logs, and also look at the audit logs as needed. There is also a deployment plan available which you can able to download for an application and able to use it as you need it. The next set of application what we would like to see is consent-based application, which we talked about it. So let's search for an application called Live Booklet or Simple Booklet, and you can able to see there is no add button over here, but there is a sign up link available. So either you can able to click on this particular link, or you can go to that particular application directly and click on the login button. Most of the time you will able to see the login with Office 365 or login with Microsoft as a button. So your users can directly go to those websites and click on the login with Microsoft or Office 365 as a button. And what it does basically, it prompts you for an authentication, and you can able to see in the request it's a OAuth based application and it's making OAuth request. So I select my particular application, and with that it's now calling me for an MFA. So I can select my MFA, and after that it will prompt me for an authentication. So either I can use my authenticator app to approve the request, or I can do a text or call as needed. But once you do this particular, it will prompt you for the consent permission as I've shown in these particular slides. And then once you provide a consent to the application automatically gets added into your Azure Active Directory. So right now I'm not going to do this. Or let me try with my another application might be. Okay, so here you can able to see I've tried with my another set of credentials, and you can able to see Simple Booklet is an application which is trying to gain the sign you in and read your profile. This is the basic permission. If I click on the accept button, basically I can directly able to log in into that application. Right now you have seen that it doesn't show me the other box consent on behalf of, and that's because I'm not an administrator. But here I can simply start using this application and I can able to get a seamless single sign-on along with OpenID OAuth application. So basically first time when I use it, only it prompts for me and consent. When the next time if I go and log in into that application with my credential, it doesn't show me that particular consent screen, and I can simply able to log in into that application. So that's how the experience looks like. One more thing which we talked about is the audit logs. And as I said, on the audit logs, if you look at the activity consent to an application, that shows the option where the different set of consent application have been added into your tenant. So when you click on this consent to an application, it will filter down all the audit logs to show only that particular activity. So you should be doing this on a monthly basis so that you can able to see different set of applications which has been added into your tenant in the last 1 month. Let's go back to the our slides again one more time, and then we will proceed further. One of the common questions which we always get from all of our customers is about there are two different set of options for the application in Azure Active Directory. One is application registration, another is enterprise application. So let's clarify what are the use cases for these two different set of features. Application registration is for your developers who are developing application inside your organization, or there is a partner who is developing application for you. It uses OpenID Connect OAuth based application. There is no claim configuration UI available over there, but we recommend that you should be using Microsoft Graph for different set of information if you need. Versus the enterprise application is more for SaaS applications, where you can provide a consent to an application, you can able to add SAML application and configure it for single sign-on or use it for user provisioning. You can able to restrict access, you can apply different conditional access policies to it, and you can able to see the reporting sign-in logs and audit logs. We know that these two options today confuse our customers, and that's where we have a plan to merge these two options into one so that we can provide one consolidated view. But that's something is still in the future. As I explained, there is a program what Microsoft runs called Application Integration Program for our customers, where you as a customer can request different applications into the app gallery. So our Get to Integration team actually receive these particular requests and work with those particular vendors to get them added into the app gallery after we test these applications. And once the application is available into the gallery, then you can able to utilize the single sign-on and user provisioning feature associated with that particular app. There is a publicly documented process for it, so just click on the link aka.ms/Azure AD app request, and we use Microsoft Application Network portal for it for ISVs and customers, where you can able to submit and track this request. The short URL for that is aka.ms/Azure AD list your app. The Microsoft Application Network portal experience looks like this, where once you log in into the portal, you as a customer can able to click on the link, say submit request by customers, and you can submit a new request over here. Remember that please provide us your partner or a vendor related information so that we can work closely with them and get them added into the app gallery. If you are directly suggesting your ISVs or partners or vendors, or you are a partner or vendor who has developed the SaaS application, then you can directly submit a request with us in this portal saying submit request by ISVs. And just clicking on the list application into the gallery button, it will start the workflow for you, where you have to answer few of the questions and then you can submit a request with us. The next set of things which we talked about is how do you integrate the line of business application with application proxy. So we have seen application proxy as a feature available into the app gallery, where you can able to add the application. But once you start adding the application, the first thing which will happen is it will show you a link to download the connectors. So if you look at the picture in details over here, you can able to see there is a on-premise infrastructure you have where different applications are running. We have taken example as HTTP sales as an application. So it's a sales application which has been hosted on-premise. We recommend that you download our connector from our application proxy page, and once you install that particular connector on your on-premise infrastructure, then it will start making an outbound connection to Azure Active Directory. And with that, you do not have to poke holes into your DMZ or any of the security devices, because all these connectors are making the outbound request. with this particular application configuration, you can able to configure your internal URL, and we will generate the external URL for it. These external URL can also be rebranded based on your organization. So for this example over here, we can see over here, it's a http sales.contoso.com. So that means we have rebranded this particular URL, which is specific to the organization. With that, user can directly do a pre-authentication before going to that particular application. Pre-authentication means user can actually do Azure AD authentication, and once he does the Azure Active Directory authentication, our connector actually convert that particular token into a Kerberos token and present to the application. So this is called Kerberos constraint delegation. In this particular scenario, if the application supports Windows integrated auth and supports Kerberos particular token, then that is directly presented by our connector. And with that, the user can seamlessly able to log in into that application. That's how they get the seamless single sign-on experience. If the application support the simple form space authentication or a basic authentication, they'll be seeing the username and passwords. Advantage for you as a customer over here is you can apply different conditional access policies and look at the sign-in logs and audit logs for those applications so that you can able to easily secure your on-premise applications with Azure Active Directory. We do have certain features in application proxy, like you can translate the URLs in headers and translate header URLs into the body, but those are some of these features required for header-based applications. And in the last, like if you look at the user journey from the perspective of a user, they can able to log in into the access panel for myapps.microsoft.com. And all these particular applications which are assigned to the user are being presented on that particular page. I, as a user, don't have to worry about whether this is a SaaS application or line of business application. By clicking on that particular, any of these particular tile, will provide the seamless single sign-on experience for a user, and the user can able to log in into that particular application directly. Along with that, Access Panel does provide another ability where I can able to change my password. I can register for self-service password reset. If I'm associated with other different organizations participating in the B2B or business to business as a guest, then I can able to sign in and leave those organizations based on GDPR compliance. All that goodness is there in the Access Panel. So we highly recommend that you in your organization should be using myapps.microsoft.com or Access Panel so that you can able to provide the seamless experience for all your users to use these applications. Check out our awesome resources. With this particular Azure AD blog post, we have requests to your new applications and tutorials. So all these particular links are given. Feel free to click on it, and then you can able to explore all our resources. Thanks for being with us. This is a great experience. Thank you.